Welcome, guys. This is lesson two of the first unit. So today's lesson is the political crisis of 1860, uh, kind of continuing our theme yesterday of the events leading up to the Civil War. So first of all, on your preview page, you need to draw this cartoon. It shows a donkey trying to pull away from something. You need to tell me, one, what the donkey represents. Number two, what's the donkey trying to pull away from? And number three, does the artist have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of South Carolina? And explain. So the first two questions, very simple. The third question, more critical thinking based. And it's important, especially for EOCs, lots of political cartoons and things like that. So it's important that you can identify what an artist is trying to say in a political cartoon. All right, so you're going to answer that, and we're going to also move on to our notes right now. And if you have any questions about that political cartoon, please come ask me in class in person. All right, so first of all, on to our notes. We're talking about the birth of the Republican Party. So the modern day Republican Party, also known as the GOP or the Grand Old Party. I've put an elephant here because that's their symbol, though that symbol did not become more relevant for the Republican Party until later on with the cartoon artist Nash. He kind of created the modern day symbols of the donkey for the Democrats and the uh, elephant for the Republicans. But the Republican Party begins in 1854 as the quote unquote anti slavery party. And basically, they were a bunch of different individuals who had different ideas about politics, some more conservative, some more liberal, but they agreed on one main thing. And the main key of their platform is that slavery should not spread into the Western territories. And so that's what's going to unite this party. In 1856, they attempted to run for the office of the presidency. They're going to lose that election. The representative was John Fremont. He loses to the Democrat James Buchanan in the election of 1856. However, in the next 2 years, a lawyer from Illinois named Abraham Lincoln is going to run for the Senate, and he's going to become the symbol of the Republican Party in the famous Lincoln Douglas, excuse me, the famous Lincoln Douglas debates. And so Stephen Douglas is this Democrat from Illinois who is very much in favor of the idea of popular sovereignty in the territories. And Lincoln is going to debate against him that slavery is wrong and immoral, that it should not be allowed to spread into the new territories. Now, it's also important to understand that he does not campaign on ending slavery in the South. He just wants to keep it from spreading into the new territories. So he becomes the symbol of the Republican Party. He becomes the representative for the party to run for president in 1860. And as you can see here, we have a four-way race between multiple candidates, including a Northern Democrat, Stephen Douglas, a guy we talked about before, and a Southern Democrat, John Breckinridge. And so what you see here is, first of all, two Democrats running. That's going to split the vote. And then you've got this guy, John Bell. He's a constitutional unionist. And he is more similar to Stephen Douglas and John Breckinridge than he is to Abraham Lincoln. So if you look at these three guys, what they all have in common is they support slavery in some way, either through making sure that it's protected as a right, either through popular sovereignty or something like that. Lincoln, on the other hand, wants to stop the spread of slavery. So he's really the only candidate for the abolitionists to vote for, while the abolitionists are going to be split between these three candidates. So let's look at the results of that election. This is the electoral map. Remember, the Electoral College is what elects the presidency, not the popular vote, and it's usually reflective of the popular vote. But when you have an election like this, sometimes it can appear through the Electoral College to be more of a landslide than the election itself actually was. So if you look here, Lincoln won the election with 180 electoral votes compared to the other candidates who did not have nearly as many as he did. But if you look at the popular vote, Lincoln won this election with only 40% of the popular vote. So we're looking at a country that is very divided right now and just elected a president with less than half of the vote. So this is going to be the main event that really starts to cause Southern states to secede is that Southerners view Lincoln as a tyrant and as a threat to their way of life, which their way of life, of course, is to own slaves as property. Um, but they view him as the threat. So uh, the main reason Southern states secede is because of slavery, but it's also a reaction to the election of Abraham Lincoln, who they view as a tyrant. So let's talk about Abraham Lincoln a little bit. He is the first Republican president in American history, so sometimes you'll hear the Republican Party referred to as the Party of Lincoln. He was a self taught lawyer. He grew up in rural poverty. He had the nickname Honest Abe, and that's because, as the cool kids say today, he kept it 100. And what that means is he was pretty brutally honest. He would sarcastically put you in your place if he thought that you said something that was unintelligent. So he was very much an intellectual. He was very much a person who enjoyed debating, but he was a sarcastic person as well. And he was brutally honest in his sarcasm. And it's important to understand that even though the Southerners were afraid he was going to take away all their slaves, he didn't want to do that. He just wanted to stop the spread of slavery into the Western territories. Of course, the Southerners, their concern was these new states would come in and the balance would be offset and their slaves would be taken away. And yes, ultimately the goal would have been to end slavery, I'm sure, at some point. But Lincoln didn't expect that to happen under his administration. He went into office uh, really with the objective of stopping the spread of slavery. And more importantly, because states are already seceding before he's even left, he wants to keep the country united because he knows this is a divided country and he knows he was elected with only 40% of the population. So he knows it's important that he represents all Americans and their interests, and he wants to preserve the Union first while at the same time stopping slavery from spreading but not ending it in the South. Um, so let's talk about the Confederate States of America because, like I said before, they start seceding. So the Confederate States is formed officially in February of 1861. That's the official formation of the government. However, many states start seceding prior to that point. They write a constitution that is almost identical to the U.S. Constitution, but it has three main differences that we're going to be focusing on here. First of all, states are independent countries, basically. They have the right to secede. They don't have to be forced to stay into this union. Basically, Confederates viewed uh, uh, the federal government as oppressing their rights, as stepping out of its boundaries by trying to uh, tell people whether or not they could have slaves in their territories, which, it's actually kind of ironic. They were mostly Democratic back then, and back then it's like the Democratic Party was the party who was arguing against big government from coming to taking away their personal property. And once again, of course, they're arguing that their personal property is people, which is on its own really messed up. So it also emphasized, by the way, number two, the protection of slavery or owning other people, which is immoral. And then finally, they advocated for the prohibition of importing slaves. Now that's kind of weird, right? That sticks out. Why would they do that? Well, they wanted the support of Great Britain and France. They were hoping to convince Great Britain or France to provide them with aid in this war that they knew was inevitable because they knew they weren't just going to secede from the United States of America without there being a war. So it's important to understand that they were hoping for aid from the British and the French. They never got it. They weren't interested in helping the Confederates, but they were hoping for it anyways. It was one of those long shots. Anyways, their first president is former Mississippi Senator Jefferson Davis. And their original flag actually looked like this over here. It's called the Stars and Bars. And you'll notice that it doesn't look anything like the Confederate flag that you often see on bumper stickers and T-shirts and things like that. And that flag that you see was never, ever the official flag of the Confederacy. It was the square version was the flag of Northern Virginia, the Army of Northern Virginia, and the rectangular version was the battle flag of the state of Tennessee. And you often see it in artwork of the Civil War, but it was never actually the official flag of the Confederacy. After this, they switched to a white flag with the square flag of Northern Virginia in the corner. And because that looked like a surrender flag, they ended up adding a red stripe right here, which it became the blood dipped Confederate flag, which was the final flag that they ever had. But that one that you see commonly was never the Confederate flag. Nonetheless, still a symbol of the Confederacy, um, became a major symbol of opposing desegregation of public schools and public facilities in the American South during the 1960s. Uh, but it was never the symbol of the actual Confederate government. And today, those who support it would argue, obviously, that it's a symbol of the South, but that depends on your perspective as far as that goes, what you think about the Confederate flag. But it's important to understand that it was never the government flag. It was a military flag and then a flag to protest desegregation of public schools. And I guess today it's supposed to be a symbol of the South. So, yeah. Anyways, uh, quickly now you're going to go back to the preview page, and underneath your preview, you're going to look at another political cartoon here. This one you do not have to draw, but you're going to answer the questions about it. So you're looking at this fella up in the tree here, this fella swinging an axe, and this tree, which you're going to tell me what is represented in the swinging the axe, or who is represented in the person swinging the axe, what is represented in the man refusing to come down, or who could that possibly symbolize, and then number three, what is the cartoon going to suggesting will happen as a result of this civil war. And you even see here the caption that'll give you a hint: Lincoln's last warning. Now if you don't come down, I'll cut the tree out from underneath you. So that'll kind of help you out and answer these questions. If you have any questions about this, come ask me in class. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good one.